ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. This is the Chrissie Mayr Podcast. You are listening to this on iTunes, YouTube, Spotify, SoundCloud, wherever great podcasts are sold or listened to for free. If you're listening on iTunes right now, please leave us a 5-star review. If you're in New York City tonight, come see me at Stand Up New York. I'll be there with doing a showcase show with Gino Bisconti, TJ Miller. Remember TJ Miller? I didn't realize that he still lived in New York, but he'll be there as well. Additionally, my buddy Andrew Harms, who is my sidekick on Wet Spot. If you watch the show, you'll recognize him from there, along with a few other great comics. So if you're in New York City tonight, come to Stand Up New York. I believe that show kicks off at 8 p.m. And then if you're in upstate New York at all, that's where I'll be this weekend. Friday, I'll be headlining at the Last Chance Tavern in Tannersville, New York. That's right on Main Street there. You can get tickets through Eventbrite. Then on this Saturday, the 16th, I'll be live in studio with Carl doing a live Who Are These podcasts with Jim Florentine. So that's going to be an extra special episode. Then I will be headlining Nickel City Cigars. This is an awesome venue in Buffalo, New York. So many people have been trying, and by people, I mean trolls, have been trying to cancel this show. They've been calling the venue. They've been calling the surrounding businesses, telling them that I am hosting not a comedy show, but a racist party. Some of these trolls have been calling in, playing porn, and that kind of uncreative trolls, if you ask me. But a lot of people have been trying to get this gig canceled for some reason. I don't know why they're picking on a small cigar business. I don't know, maybe these people are anti-smoking or something, but the owner is based and is holding firm, and nothing's going to cancel this show. So can't wait to see you guys in Buffalo this Saturday at Nickel City Cigars. Then I'll be heading to Syracuse this Sunday, the 17th. I'll be at the Syracuse Funny Bone. So that's where you can find me this weekend. And let's see what else is coming up after this weekend. Then I'll be traveling a little bit, a little personal travel. Then I'll be most likely at the Fan Expo in Boston, August 12th through 14th with the TimCast girls. So we'll most likely be doing a panel at some point that weekend. Then I'm somewhat sure I'll be going to the FNT Geeks and Gamers meetup in Vegas on August 17th. Then I will be heading to Austin Thursday, September 8th. I'll be doing the Cap City Comedy Club on that date. Then I'll be in Philly August 14th at the Helium Club. Then I'm doing a show, I think at the Comedy Cove in Jersey, September 16th and 17th with Kevin Dombrowski. Then I'll be in New Orleans September 30th and October 1st. So that's a Friday and Saturday, doing 4 shows at the Comedy House, New Orleans. Then we're doing our second Content House, in Orlando. To kick it off, we'll be doing a Comedians of the Compound show at the Improv in Orlando on Thursday, October 27th. Tickets are available for all these shows. Go to my website, chrissiemayr.com, or any of the individual venues. You can get the tickets there as well. That's right. What else do I want to shout out? I want to shout out my t-shirt guy, flagranttriggers.com. They were there for me when TeePublic kicked off my Rootin' for Putin design. So love these guys. Got a bunch of shirts on sale right now. The classic Rootin' for Putin is there. Mayor, Johnny Dabbler, keep dabbling. That's a Stuttering John shirt, of course. And we got a plain and classy TimCast shirt. $27 includes shipping. These shirts are super soft. And if you're a designer, if you make great fan art, keep tagging me, because I just want to make more and more shirts and merch and fun stuff. So let me know if you are artistically inclined. I'm excited to have this guy on the podcast today. He's a researcher. He is a content creator. He specializes in Tartaria, which I have maybe a 2% knowledge of, but he's going to expand on that a little bit. I'm so excited he's here today. I probably pronounced it wrong. Andreas Xirtus.
If you have 2% knowledge of Tartaria, that is about 2% more than anybody else in the world.
Okay, good.
So good job.
And that is only that's only the case because I get into a lot of Instagram rabbit holes ever since March of 2020. I've just been following a lot of accounts that I hadn't previously been. So Tartaria is something you've always been interested in. What I know is that it's basically it's a town, a city. It was covered by mud. There's something called the mud floods, and that I don't know. I get the part of this larger conspiracy of like we're more technologically advanced than the powers that be are letting on. I don't know if this is involved with Tesla. I don't know if they're hiding technology from us. Like we could all be hovering above ground right now, but since gas is so profitable, we have to drive our stinking cars. I don't know.
That's the beauty of Tartaria. It actually encompasses like every conceivable conspiracy about history and the future. Somehow, it just seems to do that.
It's a gateway. It's a gateway drug.
It's like if the whole world's covered in this place, you know, and so we think about where's Italy, where's Germany, where's Israel? Like these are all places that on a map weren't called that 100 years ago, 200 years ago. You know, Italy's a pretty new country in and of itself. So when we look at an old map, a lot of the time you see Tartaria everywhere, depending on how old the map is. And you can see Tartaria in maps of California, you know, but at that time, even into the 1700s, California looks like an island on all these maps. And we're just supposed to believe that nobody knew anything, that they were all wrong about all these Cartesian sailors who were charting things with their compass. They had no idea what was going on when they were traveling. But then now we can show the Cretaceous period, the Western Sea interior. We see all these old maps and we say, well, it must have been 1,000 years earlier because the geologists who've studied the fluvial geology of rivers can show that California did have these paths, but it must have been 1,000 years ago. These maps can't have possibly been at the right time. No. Now we know that ecological feedback loops that humans caused, like Mulholland, destroyed Bakersfield, made LA into a wetland, even though it's a desert, right? We've completely dried up certain places, and even though the water has been put in other places, it doesn't mean it's raining in the right place. So we've dried up lakes, we've completely changed everything in a few hundred years. But just recently, there were other places in all the maps. They seem to talk about a place called Tartaria, which would have connected Spain to China and even parts of Russia to California. And yeah, it's an interesting idea because we're always told this is the peak of civilization. And there are a number of other stories, particularly like Freemasons, right? They talk about like there was a reset. Tartarians, the Tartars were in charge. They lost everything because of nepotism.
They were called the Tartars?
Yeah, the Tartars. Yeah.
Did they have their own sauce?
Exactly. Yeah.
You can see where I'm going with this. Yeah.
It's definitely real. The tartar sauce is real. And then also steak tartare, raw steak. And there is still a country called Tartarstan, which has I interviewed some Tartarstanis. The Soviet Union had destroyed their civilization, taken all these people and put them in camps, literally just erased as much as they could. But you go there and you see it's kind of how Christianity has the Westboro Baptist Church. Islam has a bunch of people that are very like, we have very high Christians, intellectual Christians. They have very intellectual Muslims as well, right? And they're in Tartarstan. And they had some of the most, they look like you. They all look like you. They're kind of white looking and redhead looking and have green and blue eyes.
Incredibly hot. Wow, this sounds like a perfect place.
Yeah. And they have really cool architecture, basically. That's the deal, you know? But we are all connected is the other thing. And we've erased that. And we're trying to believe this is the first time and that we shouldn't have any pre-existing experience to learn the easy way from. There you go.
Would you consider this to be an accurate map? Of course, all these maps look like they were hand drawn, like at Epcot Center or something.
Well, it's funny. People start to argue about maps in the 1600s on because of the Jesuits. They think that the Jesuit Catholic Church was changing a lot of the maps and a lot of the history. And they're saying, oh, let's break, like, for instance, Beijing called Tartar City on the old maps, right? But they started to say, oh, well, really, these are Manchurians here and there. They started breaking up and dividing and conquering. And so it depends on how old you look at some of the maps. But I think Ricci, Father Ricci, is one of the 15th century priests who started charting stuff before Cartesian. And you can find in the 11th century as well. And then all across Arabs, because, Spain was part of the Cordoba Caliphate. It was a Muslim country or state of a Muslim empire for a really long time until 1492. at that point, Spain was controlling Holland. So Holland even was part of the Muslim Empire. And so during this time we call the Dark Ages, the Muslim Empire wasn't even controlled by Muslims. It was controlled by Khazarians, which were a kind of Jewish person from Georgia. And they connected into the East. They have Chinese Jews as well, Saifang Jews. So there was an entire network that connected all sorts of people that were educated, that had a different calendar system. And according to books about people who studied and explored and went to like Cordoba and went to cities of Maimonides, they had water wheels connected to electricity and had lights at night. And we're talking like 11th century having electricity. And this is documented in our own time, so in our own history. So it's not even that crazy because we see how they did it, and we see how that actually made its way through the bazaars and the Arab bazaars and markets into Holland, into electricity, into the Freemasons studying Hermes and everything. But it's really it's a practical thing. It's a regular science. We have all of the records of it, and people still using it. So all this is coming out right now, and the only people who are talking about it are George Soros' kid, Alex Soros, has brought it up, and Klaus Schwab brought up Tartaria, and the Freemasons 100 years ago. But you can see it's basically been forgotten, and it's not that it's not there. We have all the evidence of it everywhere.
This doesn't sound like a quick summer read. This doesn't sound like something you can just like thumb through on the beach and be like, oh, I learned something. This is like you have to dig in for months cause it just seems like, okay, there was a much more advanced civilization sooner than most of us understand, and it's being hidden, or it was recast. I don't know. And I guess to favor a certain group. Woo! It's just kind of a lot.
Yeah, for sure. It's a rabbit hole. It's a lot of rabbit holes. And the thing is, I used to work for CNN, and I did a lot of the social media for them. And around the time that Flight 370 happened is when I decided I wanted to leave, because it was just too crazy. Like, is a black hole behind Flight 370? The kinds of things that were being come up.
I have not heard of Flight 370. Oh, this is Malaysian Airlines.
The Malaysian Airlines thing. Yeah. And so it was a crazy time. I stayed for like another year after that, but it was just like, or at least a few months, half a year or something. But it was just, I started moving my way into South America. I was like, I got a good thing I can do. And I just started leaving the Turner company because it just wasn't for me. But I learned a lot about how news works and how, you could talk about fake news. You could talk about how that works. But fake news becomes fake history because people just believe it, and it just becomes old. So at a certain point, we can be looking at a newspaper article from 200 or 300 years ago. 200 years ago, you could see us fighting in some silly war with some group, and it's clearly demonstrated that we're the good guys and they're the bad guys. And as you start to dig, you realize that all of these fake news that have become fake history are building up this impression, of course, these people are not a real country, they're just terrorists. And then this group that we just established, they're a real country, and so over and over again you can see examples going back. And I felt like it was like an important service, knowing how fake news works, to try to like break apart old fake news and get the closest thing to a new narrative going.
Yeah,
I also thought it wasn't that dangerous because it's 100 years old, but it's actually way more dangerous than I ever thought.
And a good example of recent fake news is how they've been spinning January 6th. It's like anybody who was there can say it like it honestly wasn't that big a deal, but they focus on like the instigators. They're trying to forget about that there was government influence for sure, the infiltration of these groups. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter like what anybody was there says. It's just like they're gonna write it in their way with the narrative.
Grandma's on the no-fly list, but everyone from, was it May, like 529, like the Antifa, right? That's completely understood. It's natural response to chaos.
Yeah. Okay. So Tartaria looks fun. I'm so interested in your background because the fact that you were like, was CNN your first job out of school?
No, I have a weird like background. So first off, like when I was like 13, I was digitizing records I'm from Silicon Valley.
Just so like a normal 13-year-old would do. Yeah, that seems.
I mean, there wasn't a lot of people that had this skill set to like remove scratches from recordings of old records, and I had been really good at that. So I was working for a company called Pigaloo back in 2000 during the .com bubble when I was 13. So I was already kind of like into that.
You were getting paid at 13, or were you just like an intern?
No, I was getting paid, because they needed that. Yeah. and eventually started working on nanotech. I started 3D printing and like camera work, and I got a nice camera when I was like 16. I had an HD camera, so I went to the university and just said anybody who needed a film who didn't have access to a good camera, so all the 134 senior projects that I could get my hands on, I would film their projects. So that way I had like a portfolio of videos I like to do. But so I was simultaneously figured there's no point in going to Hollywood and making movies. It's crazy. But that was the thing that started to happen for me while I was going to school to do engineering. This guy's a member of the NWO for sure, right? Yeah. I mean, I guess
So you're a bit of a whiz kid, it sounds like.
I mean, I liked Linux and stuff like that. I was just really lucky to be in Silicon Valley and have access to that stuff. I feel like anybody could do it. It's just that that's not the toys that they give kids, and that's the trouble,
No, they give them a TikTok account.
Right. I also was like, I was disconnected from a lot of things because up in the mountains, so I had video cassettes, but didn't have like access to live TV for a while too.
Oh wow, that's the best. I think the less TV you can watch, the better. And
Yeah.
you're from California?
Yeah, like Santa Cruz. It's like where the vampires in the Lost Boys movie.
Where the vampire.
It was a serial killer capital of the world for like 30 years, right?
Santa really?
Cruz. Yeah, it's like it was one of the most dangerous places to live. I wish it still was called that because it would get rid of tourism, hopefully. But it's now just the most overpopulated and like Mark Zuckerberg living place. But for a long time, it was just scary,
And I'm sure like the homeless have taken over from the serial killers as most dangerous squad. Damn. Okay. Have you always been kind of interested in news? So what brought you to working for CNN?
So I guess what it was they were looking for someone who understood meta tags. They knew what a hashtag kind of was at that time.
What is a meta tag?
So when you look at a website, it has if you inspect a website or any code, you'll see a bunch of terms that robots see, but you don't see. And so when you look for a website, there's all these terms that are helping the spiders crawl the web, right, in order to get the content. But you don't see the terms always. Some of those words are just like news, hashtag, or whatever kind of description. And
are they like SEO descriptors, but that you can't see?
Right. SEO is a part of SEO is a usage of meta tags. But you can use meta tags for all kinds of other reasons, and you can have variable tags that are like you've seen some of the worm scripts where they're like, hey, Chrissie, because it's got like a way of pulling up a registry of names and stuff. So you can do a lot with meta tags, and they were interested in getting into social media because they knew that the television was kind of falling apart. And this is like 2012 or 13, and CNN was already horrible, but it wasn't as bad as it is now. They still kind of were trying to figure out what to do. And I think they really decided. So after Flight 370, they're like, what would you put? And I was like, where in the world is Flight 370? Hashtag Gilligan's Island, and they're like, people are missing. We can't make jokes about things like that. What if we put is a mental illness behind the pilot crashing Flight 370? And I was like, okay, boss, like, what do you say? So we do it. And also I had a really cool, like one of my bosses. So in the power struggle that is this pyramid scheme, Bert DeBrow, he created the Jerry Springer Show and just did so many important things. And he teach lessons like it doesn't matter if people like something. It only matters if they react. If they hate it, it's good. And these are the lessons that really have translated to social media. It's absolutely true. But he says, okay, they're going to react to that. However, when they reacted poorly, and CNN didn't really get that. It's at Turner Enterprises. We have to go to Georgia every week. I had to go every week to explain what was going on in California, and people started tagging the post from CNN saying this is stupid, this is ridiculous, like, and all kinds of hashtags that put it into swarms of other things, and they were like, delete it. And I'm like, I can only delete your copy. I can't delete everyone else's. That's how and so they had me fly back a second time in the same week and explain, and I was like, look, basically you are no longer the 60% of the television stations. You're now, a few of the websites, and everyone's a website. Even every single audience member is no longer an audience. Now they're like a user. They're a content creator themselves. And again, this is 2013, so it's not even that far along yet, but it's still happening. But you can get into it, you're going to make it work, it'll be fine, I'm assuming. And then they just like sold Flipboard, shut down a bunch of stuff. They sent me to Coachella, and I basically kind of quit.
What did they send you to do at Coachella? Just cover it?
Basically, yeah. I went to a lot of these like after party
We'll
shows
have a
with
good
Katy
time.
Perry. Yeah, but you know, it's weird when you're getting like IV banana bags of vitamin water at a Katy Perry like after party by Adidas. And if you have to like drive an extra hour to buy a jacket so you can be at a Jeremy Scott party, you know what I mean? Which I still have the jacket for.
Jacket for you?
Yeah, you have to wear the right jacket to be at the right after party for the Jeremy Scott fashion show.
Oh,
That
God.
is Hollywood, right? It's not any. I feel like parts of New York are probably similar, right? So that made me leave. I just wanted to go.
Did you enjoy that culture? Like, did it make you feel kind of like, oh, I'm like included. I'm in the like a cool kids club.
I mean, to an extent, I think when I first got there, to an extent, but I mean, when you get to LA, there's a part of you that's thinking, I'm going to achieve my dream. And there's the other part of you that's thinking, I'm going to save the world, you know? So I'm like, I'm going to be like the boy with the hope in the eyes, and I'm going to save LA. And then as time goes on, you're like walking around and you start picking up on the other dream, which is this projected nightmare of consumerism. And you're like, no, I just want a penny board made with a Minnie Mouse print. If I just had a red, white polka dotted Pennywise board, I'd be happy to skateboard down Venice Beach Boulevard, and I would be willing to continue to pay and work another week. And you just get trapped in this false dream, and then eventually you're just as bad as LA itself, you know, it feels like. And I didn't quite get that bad, but I felt like I was getting there, because I was like, okay, this is ridiculous. Like, I'm in Palm Springs, like living at eating happy hour tacos in order to survive, to work for CNN and Ted Turner. This is crazy. So I was like, I'm going to find something else to do. You know, I felt like way, way uplifted once I just landed in Chile. And I was just like, so I spent the next year and a half in South America, just wandering around. And that was, you know, all along the way. It was
you had like enough savings to just like hang out in Chile for a year. Oh,
well, Chile and Argentina, and like I went all over the South America, and I hitchhiked a lot, and I worked in hostels and stuff.
Oh, you're one of those. Okay. All right.
What is that?
You're like a live, love, laugh pillow. You're like one of those girls who like, I just want to travel.
I did want to be one of those girls. I don't know if I quite am, but
I'm just fucking with you. So how did you go from CNN to working at TimCast, or was there something in between other than Chile?
So 2010, I lived in Venice Beach, and my friend Judd was on Survivor and won Survivor. And then so we were doing all this stuff, like I was doing video projections for his band Space Funk Odyssey, and he lived in a house which was it was the house that the Doors used to live in. Ray Manzarek lived in the front house that Ian Crossland was living in. And I was squatting in the room in the back house where Jim Morrison apparently was squatting. And things we found out later about our lives. But
how did it smell?
Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, because it was an old house, and it's right on the edge of Davy Jones Liquor Locker, and it was a surf house, and we're all surfers, and you know, so it was what it was.
And where was this?
It smelled like marijuana.
Okay.
It was in Venice Beach, you know.
Okay.
Yeah, but we met. I met Ian Crossland there, and so we've been friends ever since. Totally brethren. And he came to South America for a while after I left the first time I left South America, because there was a lot of crazy stuff that happened in South America over that year and a half, involving so I met Niesman, who was this attorney who was suicided in Argentina, and he'd given us a USB drive, and I was involved with, you know, The Guardian and several other newspaper articles were publishing information that Niesman had put out. Basically, Niesman gave us a USB drive, and we went to Paraguay, and then about a day or 2 days later, he was supposed to go to trial. He was found dead an hour before trial with a gun in his hand, and it was supposed to be a suicide. About 10 years earlier, the Jewish population of Buenos Aires had been bombed, and it had caused a major exodus of Jews to Israel from Argentina, as well as papers started coming out about some sort of Iranian deal. And the same day Niesman died was the day that the former Sultan, what do you call it? The House of Saud, Mohammed bin Salman took over that day. And so I went to Paraguay got away for a while, took a bus down, went to Bariloche, which is where the Atomic Research Center of Argentina is. And eventually, Cristina Fernandez Kirchner came out and said, hey, we don't know what's going on. We don't know what's happening. All I'm saying is that Obama made us do it. And the paperwork we'd found on the USB drive had showed there was a grain for oil deal that had transpired between Iran and Argentina. Like, you've got grain in Argentina, we have oil, we need to exchange. How about we have sweetened the deal? You remove some names of some terrorists from an international want list from your country. And then she says, look, the thing was, Obama wanted us to give the Nazi nuclear data that Argentina had from the Hummel fusion reactor, to Iran. And we didn't want to do it, but Obama made us do it. And it was a weird situation because I didn't know what was going on. I had no idea that was what happened. I'd gone accidentally, just for fun, to the atomic research area of Argentina. So I don't know for sure, but I assume kind of almost that's why she came out with this. She's like, they must know what's going on. I don't know what's happening. It's about to be this whistleblower scenario. So I had to leave Argentina and I went to Chile and went back to Peru. And then Peru's a longer story, but I had my passport stolen. I basically had to get smuggled out after being like it's a slave at a hostel for like a month, And then I met Ian again and said, Ian, what's up with you? And he's like, well, I want to go to Peru and save the world, right? We're going to go clean up the rainforest. I also studied graphene and nanotechnology was my main. I was trying to study engineering, and that's why I ended up in data science for whatever reason. But he's like, we could make some kind of cure for the Amazon. So he went down to do that. And then the president, we were working for the president of Peru. So it seemed plausible. But then the president of Peru, there was a coup that he's behind closed doors, supposedly shot himself or was suicided again. And then we had to get smuggled out of the country, essentially. And we got to Chile and lived there for a while.
Exciting. How do you get smuggled out? What do you put a burlap sack over your bag?
It's really, it's probably better not to always say these things, but the way that Assange did it, like multiple tickets, multiple places, But we got out, went to Chile. Chile is a very safe country, arguably, and it's run by the military in a lot of ways. And when we got home to California, Ian and I were talking a lot. He went to Connecticut. We started working for this Palace Theater. And then after the Palace Theater, Tim was going to the Palace Theater as well. And that's how we got connected with TimCast. And so started working for Tim.
What is the Palace Theater? It's in Connecticut?
Right, yeah. So it used to be where everyone used to play their Wednesday show before their Friday shows at the if you were Broadway or the Catskills or anything you're doing in New York, all the bigs, you had to go through the Palace Theater first. So it's just really, Houdini played his last major show, his East Coast show before he died. There's like people who think Houdini's ghost is there. It's a weird theater. So we were living in this theater and we were trying to make movies and shows. And
we're living in a theater,
a haunted 18th century theater that Lincoln had been in. But then COVID hit and we were at about a block away was Party Zero. If you look up Party Zero, it's like the first COVID American outbreak. And it was, billionaires and millionaires with their own jets, the Connecticut kind of people. And they,
I went to school in Connecticut.
It was a super spreader event, man.
Oh my God. Party Zero, how a soiree in Connecticut became a super spreader.
So we got COVID in 2019 in December. And
before it was cool.
Yeah.
This was in a suburb. Oh, it was in Westport. Okay.
Those leftists with their jam bands. I know.
So you were at Party Zero.
Right, yeah. And we were connected with Brian Prisbeck, who ran the Media Benders at the time, was connected with all kinds of these who's who people. So it was it was a total nightmare. But it ended up being, we survived it. We were fine. I went to Bermuda, and then when I got back, America was shut down. I came back with a masquerade mask, and I was the first person to wear a mask on a plane. I have all these pictures. I had this big beak masquerade, from the 15th century looking stork. And
With like the
yeah,
doctor costume.
right. And I didn't know where to put it because I didn't want to break it. So I was wearing it and I was like, hey, they let Muslims wear masks. Let's see what happens. And everyone's like, cool mask, cool mask. And by the time I landed, there was a new requirement coming that everyone that was going to have to start wearing masks. And that was the first mask mandate. It felt like that 12 Monkeys movie.
That should have been your credit. That should have been how I introduced you. First person to start the mask trend.
My God.
Yeah, the plague doctor. There we go. The chat knows.
Dude, like 4 months earlier, I got a picture of it where I'm on someone's podcast and he's like, so what's coming next? And I put on a plague mask and I just start dancing. And granted, I had no idea that there was going to actually be like a mask epidemic, but it became kind of a meme. They're like, he knows. I'm like, yeah, sure.
Holy snap. Okay, so you bonded with Ian over graphene and you ended up at Party Zero together. You caught COVID together. So then did Ian kind of pitch you to Tim, or did you kind of say, hey, like how did these relationships, form? Like, because when I first met you last March of 2021, when I did TimCast, you were there. There was like you were in charge of basically like, I think security tech. There was like a map. It was so interesting. You were like, these are all the people trying to hack in. And if I'm misremembering this, just correct me. And I was just like, wow. It was just like
like all the time.
Like someone said in the chat, like an episode of 24.
People don't realize how often people are trying to hack TimCast and how big of a deal it is. And especially because of the kinds of people that are always coming through, trying to keep them safe. It's like the most important thing. And
how can you tell? Like, how can a computer tell if someone's trying to hack in?
It's, there's a certain kind of, there's a secret handshake. There's a secret handshake. And when you don't know the secret handshake, it can tell. Also, when someone makes a handshake, something can watch and record a handshake, and it can over and over again watch that until eventually it figures out what exactly was going on in that handshake, and it can get it right. And it can also pretend to be you, and it can, it can spoof. So there's a lot of different kinds of problems that are overcome in different ways, especially by locking in and having watertight. But, the thing is, it's also interesting just how many people really want to do that, because, again, you've got senators, you've got politicians, you've got really important corporate businessmen and everything. So there's a value to it. So they're also hiring people that are trying to hack in for them, that are from, Fiverr or some website or something like that. So it's pretty weird. But I guess the first time I met Tim, so I went to Occupy also, but the first time I really met Tim, I think Ian was at his house and he invited me to Virginia. I landed the first time I'm in Virginia, right? I drive with Ian to New Jersey. And then I crash at this house and I wake up in the morning and it's Tim's house. And I'm in the bathroom in the morning and Tim comes in the bathroom without his beanie. And I'm like, are you Tim's brother? It's like, no, I'm Tim.
And then you can look directly at his head. Yeah, it was just like the sun,
Yeah. That was a long time ago. And so that was fun. Like basically the first time I met Tim, I like crashed at his house. And
when
then,
was that? 2018,
18,
2019, after the Chile thing?
Yeah. So we talked for a bit. I listened to him. He did the thing he does where he's like, what do you guys think about this, to the general crowd? And he says, like, this is what's going on. And then most of them are like, yeah. And I'm like, well, then also this. So then I think that when you aren't just an NPC with Tim, like he notices you,
Okay.
So we kind of became,
you
and
would
like
think someone in his position would want a lot of yes people around them, because if they are kind of
you don't want a bunch of jerks,
right? Especially from a technical standpoint, like, so you hadn't really done any kind of like corporate tech.
Well, I mean, I did. I also I was an intern at NASA, so I spent a lot of time doing.
Okay. I was about to ask you about flat Earth.
You can. What's weird is there are people at NASA that believe in flat Earth.
Here's my thoughts. If going to the moon is so easy and we've done it, why are we not sending influencers to the moon to do, like, you know what I mean?
The Japanese are working on that. That's actually what their new project is.
I just feel like if it was, for as much time has gone by, like, people really haven't been back very much, and you'd think there'd be more TikToks with people on the moon.
Yeah, I mean,
if space is really real.
You'd think that in the 80s, the CIA Stargate project wouldn't have been necessary. All these remote viewing projects where they're sending psychics to the moon to negotiate with ghosts, right? Like if you read the Freedom of Information Act, I mean, the weird stuff that we've been doing, it clearly kind of presupposes that things are different than we think they are. Yesterday on my Wednesday Ultra, so we do like kind of an MK Ultra declassifying show where we just go through papers and talk about random stuff. We were looking at the South Park where they launched the Pinewood Derby car into space, if you remember. So basically
that episode.
They make a red Pinewood Derby car that looks exactly like a couple of years later when Elon Musk launches his red Roadster into space.
Oh.
So the Roadster's based on the South Park at least. And then where does it come from? Well, the dad goes to CERN. He steals some of the quantum whatever, puts it into the car, launches it. Aliens pick up on the fact that humans have finally built this thing, and they come down and they test humans who fail the test, spoiler alert, but then they get locked into a firmament like thing that the moon and part of our solar system's in. We're just locked in, so we can only go as far as our moon, basically. And that, I mean, that's kind of it kind of feels like we're locked in a lot of ways.
The Bible mentions a firmament,
right?
It's not a new theme.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Okay. So you get in with TimCast. You basically show Tim that you are not a yes man. You kind of
I'm the fool. I'm a jester.
You're a fool. He sees you as like, oh, this person has a lot of knowledge. And then he what offers you a job, brings you in, hey, help me with security and help me with technical shit.
It started out where I stayed for like a week, hung out a bunch, and then I left and came back when they started their website, and then I hand-did 30,000 accounts, like just built their first, just added all these accounts because their website was crashing and their system wasn't working right, and so we just like pumped in as many, like just for 36 hours straight, just nonstop, and then would sleep for a little while and do it again with, and Ben was there too, and we were just constantly trying to. Ben was. He was working at TimCast at the time as well. Okay. He's a Linux genius, computer guru, and so we were working on a lot of these accounts, got them input, and then that became kind of like the beginning. And I just started really as an email guy at first, just doing the account thing and trying to fix all the the accounts, and then it went on. We started 3D printers and lasers and build a fab room, and all this other stuff started to happen.
Wow, that's so neat. That's super interesting. So how long did you work with Tim for?
What, like over a year? I'm not sure exactly. Just about a year. I mean, the other thing is, it's like it's cooler to be friends with people than to have to work for them. And
well, that's what I keep hearing. Like, if you have a wedding, you don't want to, like perfect example. I have a really good friend who's a photographer. I don't want to hire the friend to be the photographer at the wedding because you want him to enjoy it.
Yeah, I forget what that's called. How do you say don't consume where you defecate? There's got to be a better way to put that.
Don't hire your friends.
It's not just that, but it's like, so I was watching this show recently about The Offer. It's like a Paramount show about making The Godfather. And he's got this great girlfriend who runs this like great business. And he's a great, Rand Corporation guy who's working on shows. But then she wants to spend time with him and can't just spend time with him doing fun stuff. She wants to work on a movie, and it completely destroys their relationship because they're like,
wow.
I see that happen so much to people, whether they're friends or lovers, and it's funny because Ayn Rand would say you have to work together to make love, and you have to make love if you work together. But I just think it's maybe wrong. Like, there are time, place, and manner for hanging out with people, and you will destroy what you like about somebody if you movies. Have you ever worked on a movie? Like, by the end of the movie, everyone hates each other until it gets a lot of money. If it gets a lot of money, then you're friends again, kind of.
The only experience I have is like doing a content house where it's like 15 of us in a house for like 4 days straight, but of that there's 48 hours like straight of a stream, and we have to constantly like tag each other out and wake people up and like really work together. But I never became sick of anybody. Like, there are a couple little like arguments, but
you ever see Alex Stein back in the Glass House days when he was on Glass House? So the same year that my friend Judd wins Survivor, I was auditioning to be on Glass House. Alex Stein was on Glass House, and I didn't get this until like a week or two ago. I didn't even connect these things, but he was living in LA at the same time. And, Conspiracy Castle, the hip hop improviser, who just made AOC's day.
Oh
He
yeah.
was voted. They asked him on the show. Glass House is like a transparent, real world like house. You know, the audience asked him to become the villain. He became the villain. He was the worst in the ways that you've seen him be heckling to politicians. He was that character in the house, and then he was said, "Okay, I did what you guys asked. The audience asked me to do. So I did it. I'm asking you to vote me back into the house because the audience could vote you back in." And then the audience decided they didn't want to vote him back in because he was bad, or maybe it was rigged. We don't know the truth about how it works. But that was his like 2-3 days into the reality television foyer.
Oh my God, how did I have no idea about this?
Right.
I wonder if he enjoyed that experience.
I mean, it's the part where you get kicked off is humiliating, probably.
Shit. Who is Alex Stein? The troll who sexually harassed AOC is the first thing that comes up when you DuckDuckGo search Alex Stein Glass House. It's so interesting to watch the news coverage of Alex because it's gone from over the months like comedian, and then just today I saw like far right or alt right troll, and it's like, wow, he's just a goofy dude with like every time he smiles, it's like a shark smiling. He's got like 100 teeth.
Yeah, he's also he used to sell cars. I did an interview with him recently.
Yeah, like not that long ago.
Yeah. Dude, his freestyle game. So on my channel, I've got him freestyling for 6 minutes. We didn't tell him how long it was going to be for, and he just goes for it, and he broke his record. Like the dude's pretty great. I gotta say, like he got a lot of energy.
He is great. I appreciate his balls. That's so neat. Okay. So I want to make sure we're continuing the story. So you go from CNN, you live, love, laugh, go to Chile, you start up with TimCast, you work for him for about a year. Why did you leave? What, like
basically want like so
business conflict?
I want to do my own, like, so I already had my own show, and I came there to like, and I basically stopped doing my own channel for like a year, and so like the kinds of people I interview, like Alexander Dugin, so I'm interviewing like the Russian Putin advisor, and I try to do like bigger,
serious.
weirder. Yeah, kind of weirder, bigger things a lot of the time.
Why did you want to have someone like that on? Like, what do you want to get like interesting nuggets from them?
I mean, I focus on, I mean, it's just part of, I've spent so much time in the international political world science scene. I've spent so much time overseas. I want Americans to know these things, but really I'm focused on a world audience anyway. So I can talk to people from The Guardian. I can get in touch with politicians or people from, and I'm Croatian and Spanish. I can speak a little Russian. I can speak some Spanish and Croatian. I can get by, so I'm able to connect with people in different countries. And I think it's important to do those stories. So I kind of became a Cast Castle guy, which is fun. I was a Joker and a fool character, but it's just incongruent with what I'm trying to do, and so much of what I care about doing. So I've been making more effort to interview. Like I just did David Brin. I interviewed David Brin, the author of The Postman. That movie, The Postman, with Kevin Costner. He did a lot of sci-fi stuff, and he advises the government's letter agencies on what could go wrong, right? So, and he has a really good defense for saying, hey, the CIA are listening to science fiction authors and trying to create solutions. And how many times would the world have been ended if sci-fi hadn't stepped in and told the CIA what to do to save America? So these are the things I want to focus on more than just eating a donut burger, But otherwise, I still love Tim. I still love
TimCast. Important, yeah. But it took you away from your path a little bit.
Yeah,
that's actually really good that you caught that, because so many people, you could easily spend a lifetime just doing what you're good at or doing something to make money rather than being in touch with that voice and like, oh hey, what do I really want to create? And if you ignore that for too long, you become like a resentful old man. So
you gotta check your I-Ching. But I did my book of changes, and the I-Ching told me
what's that?
The Chinese, you ever watch Tron, and they got the book of changes. No. Basically, the ancient Chinese, you throw bones and then they land in a certain path, or you can use a number generator.
Really?
Coins or whatever. Yeah,
I throw bones, but in a different way. Fair. I mean, that's my whole 20s.
Yeah, right. That's good. But
you throw bones and
it tells you some number pattern, and then you get like a hexagram, and it tells you in the book of changes, because the I-Ching, you can only step in the same river once. It's always changing, but every river is the same because they follow the path of least resistance back to the source. I-Ching's great. It says you will. I'm asking it. Will I? What is the product of me moving and getting a job at TimCast? And it says you will. The same. Let's say the same river will flow to your new well.
Ooh.
Right? You will find a well that will connect to the same.
This
so
sounds
nothing
like
changes.
astrology, but for men, to be honest. You're just like looking for something else to give you answers and guidance, which I support.
Viking runes and Chinese bone throwing. It does sound very manly. Doesn't it?
It does. I think it's great to look to that shit. I think
sounds like some commie gobbledygook. Someone
the
says.
universe is always giving you guidance. It just comes in different forms. So that's really neat. God, is there a book? I want to read about the I-Ching. The chat is giving me shit for not knowing what it is.
I'll send you the was it Winnie Pooh? Was it the Tao of Winnie the Pooh? I think is the greatest gateway drug to Taoism and to I-Ching.
I should know. I mean, I did study like a world religion. I did have a world religion class in college, but
Winnie the Pooh tells Piglet, "We must go to say hello to Christopher Robin." And then Piglet says, "Why?" And then Pooh says, "Well, what day is it?" And he says, "Well, it's Thursday." It's like, "Well, then we will go to wish him a happy Thursday." The
makes sense. Okay. Yeah. So the bones told you to leave TimCast.
Well, they told me it would be fine well, that was more like, what happened with that? I don't think I even needed to do the I-Ching at that point. I was just thinking to myself, and then Brittany and I were also going to Minnesota for the summer for a while, and I did a Vice special, and so all of a sudden things were starting to happen for me. I just did this special on Hollow Earth, and Vice paid me like all these volcanoes and tunnels and all this stuff. So I was like, okay, I'll do this thing. It's time to do the thing,
Okay, awesome. So do you feel like they're like celebrities and elites have underground bunkers like inside Hollow Earth, or do you feel like there's just a whole nother ecosystem, plants, animals? I guess I could just listen to your thing.
I guess, the way I look at it is, first off, on a practical level, it's hard enough to convince people that the earth isn't just dirt beneath their feet. But if you start looking into subterranean oceans and seas, you'll find there's huge areas of like more than there is on top of land, more than there's 75% ocean. There's bigger oceans underground. Also, there are places that are cavernous that could be super saturated. Sorry. I don't know what's going on there. Stop.
Time to take your birth control.
No, right? What? Make it go away. Stop. I don't know. I've never had this stay on like that. Okay. What was it at? Okay, so there's super saturated places with caverns, and there are also volcanic sea snails that are living in magma, and the metal is turned into their shells. And you can find pictures of you like a volcanic sea snail, a volcanic snail. It's covered in metal. Its whole shell is made out of metal, so it looks like this crazy predator alien. So, and people talk about Godzilla and these other things. Like, yes, there are Hollywood representations of extremophiles, things that love extreme environments, that live underground. Beyond that, whether there are time traveling insectoid genetically modified super soldiers from the future, that are based on us, whatever the stories go. Agartha, yeah, there you go. That thing is weird, right? And that lives at like 1,000 degrees in sulfur. Whoa. So things that can survive are crazy. But there are the stories of Agartha and of civilizations, and we know about, like you said, military bases, especially dumb military bases. There are probably connections to both worlds. Who's to say? It's Adam Quigley on the phone.
Yeah, is Adam on the phone? I just like to bring up occasionally comments from the chat. Oh, NVIDIA, update the links on your website, Chrissy. Okay, I will. NVIDIA, I just learned that you're a woman, by the way. This whole time I thought you were a guy. I don't know why. Not that it matters. I don't see gender. Okay, interesting.
Lumerians. One of your Douglas Dauntless says Lumerians under Mount Shasta. Yeah, there's this whole idea of Telos, the city underneath Mount Shasta. And in the 1800s, especially, people would talk about like the natives told them stories, and the Scandinavians said this is where to come. And a lot of these stories are about, hey, there's a volcano, there's this underground civilization there that says the volcano is on top of a former silicon tree or something like that, or a giant city, and that all the gold in California is from the top part of Telos exploding, which is why it's in pure form. And that if you go underground, you'll find these giants, and the giant dudes that are like 10 feet tall, 9 feet tall, come out every once in a while, buy something in the town, and leave raw gold and jewels and stuff from the mountain, and then go back to their caves. So there's all these weird stories, you know, in California, especially about Hollow Earth.
Where does one even begin? Like, would you recommend? I feel like there's too much.
To begin in terms of Hollow Earth, yeah. Oh, if it's a Xirtus deep dive, Xirtification, you just got to go to my channel. You know,
Xirtification, I love that.
You got to go. They've got the History Revised documentary. I think that's a great place to start. It just breaks down everything you think you know, and then it reminds you.
You dumb. You don't know anything. Oh my God, I was not subscribed to your channel. How embarrassing. Okay, I'm going to bring up your channel.
I appreciate it. I'm nearly at the 20K mark finally. It took a little while, but it's been growing pretty fast. Get a few thousand in like a month, so getting faster up. And then you've got, so that's my remix of Ted Turner's Doomsday broadcast, because there's a video cassette at Turner designed that if everybody dies, it'll pick the tape up with a robot and start to play this tape. But I've added some scenes to it to make it more interesting. And
what?
Have you ever had the desire to write your initials with?
Oh wait, is this it, or is this a commercial?
It's a whole thing. It's like it's an experience. You know what I mean?
Oh, this is the Doom. Damn. Okay.
Yeah. It's like if the world's gonna end, you want to watch this tape.
Why?
Planning a trip soon. Can you remember the tallest man you've ever seen? Do you love to go wandering beneath the clear blue sky? Have you noticed what big stars real estate agents have become? Are you careful with your personal records? Does your computer ever seem to have a mind of its own? Have you ever visited a Chinatown section in a major city? Have you ever visited a flea market? Have you ever visited a truck stop? Did you ever have a job as a waiter? Have you noticed how many successful restaurants are theme-based these days?
One news network planned what they'll show during humanity's final moments.
If this is ever on CNN, it means the world is coming to an end.
For real? I can't believe this.
Something Ted Turner actually produced in the early days of CNN to air on Doomsday when the world's ending. The video restriction even says, quote, hold for release till end of the world confirmed.
That's great, CNN. So
Also, it's the dinosaurs.
The great hunt would always be
A little bit of the Red Dawn. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff going on there.
Copyright struck.
Yeah, you probably you can watch it later. I have a fair use for it though, because I did it during COVID. The lawyers were all out on bail, you know. So I basically got that one without I get commercial for it. It's copy fair use. The other one is the History Revised documentary, and it breaks down like the names of the old countries, the maps. It shows you where all the technology comes from. It shows you tanks in the 1600s in Italy that they had built, submarines from Portugal, flying machines from the 11th century. You know, then the UFO club NIMSA from the 1800s. There were like UFO clubs in the U.S. that were NIMSA. Yeah, so all that kind of stuff.
Okay, awesome. So you're kind of like, I wouldn't call you a hacker, but you're like hacker adjacent. I feel like you have to understand them to be able to protect people.
I'm a hacker, but like I'm a white hacker. So the way they call
you're
hackers,
a white hacker,
the white hat versus black hat versus
white hat. Okay,
yeah.
They said you're a white hacker. I'm like, I like that you guys are divided up by race.
Yeah, it's a tragedy amongst, you know, it's the Mississippification of hacking. But what they did was they said if you're a black hat, then you're out there for evil. I don't know if that's really true. I know a lot of black hats that are actually not, but you can say maybe they are technically gray hats because they are trying to do good. Maybe it's like Dungeons and Dragons and Magic and it's chaos neutral. But with a white hat, we'll be like, hey, I noticed that you screwed something up and that this is open. And then you'll say, I found the patch for you and I can sell it to you or I can give it to you. You know, grayer and grayer the more you sell it. But your idea is you're trying to protect from bad things happening. Hey, Sony, you know, you have a vulnerability. I found your vulnerability. A lot of dudes make their living and women make their living off of fixing vulnerabilities in sites just like that, just finding them, you know, so it's an important thing.
What do you make of the Hunter Biden hack? Because this was like they hacked
Julia is 26.
iCloud.
I love the password is Julia is 26 exclamation point in case you guys need it. But be careful because you don't want that data on your computer. He probably has stuff that is illegal, right? So you don't want to have contents that's illegal. So you should be careful looking at that stuff. Probably shouldn't.
Okay. I'm looking for it. Somebody made an amazing remix of just like all of. I was like, I don't understand why. I know men like love their penises, but like, why does he need so many videos of his penis? Like, why?
I think that's the crack.
It's just him like up front. I don't know, and they're not flattering. There was a really great like mix of everything. Him and like the sensory deprivation tank with the crack and the like. He's always like dipping his balls in something. I don't know. He's very
Mr. Obvious did a really good video on the nature of QAnon's hack, or how they exactly did it. It wasn't much of a hack. It's just getting the password for iCloud, which wasn't that hard to do. And then the amount of people that have downloaded it and tried to verify, corroborate when changes could have been made, right? Because it's someone would have had to log in and create a new duplicate of the phone to change anything. So it's very unlikely that there's been any changes made to the phone, that these are probably the way it was on the phone. For instance, the name Pedo Pete being listed as the father, it's probable that this actually the way it was. It's not been changed. So these are the things that people are looking through. And yeah, I recommend the 4chan video by Mr. Obvious. But with Hunter Biden, you got to wonder, what does he have on his dad? Because he's able to do this and he's just in public. It's not, I feel like he's taking these pictures for the CIA or the NSA or whatever. He's like, look at my penis. And
he's not trying to have a good angle. He's not, it's not like anything he's going to throw up on a dating site, you know?
Yeah. He's like, you guys are my guardian angels. You're watching me all the time to keep me safe. And and if I die, then we'll go release this automated service, which will show what my dad did or something. I mean, that's a horrible hypothetical.
If these are videos, like maybe it's possibly to blackmail his dad, or they're videos like for the CIA. So what they're supposed to be, speculation. There's speculation, supposedly. Yeah. If they're like constantly checking his phone in real time, like checking the files, so that they just always know what he's doing.
Yeah, just like everybody. You know, I mean, they're watching everybody's phone,
right?
And they have algorithms to check, and it's not a watch list; it's a watch index. And he's important, and they want to make sure he's safe, because if he dies, it's world front page news. So they have to keep him alive all the time, right? A crackhead.
Wouldn't that make you feel special? You're like, wow, there's groups out there that want to keep me alive no matter what.
Yeah, that's what I kind of think. It looks like that's what's going on in his eyes.
Why wouldn't you want to clean up your freaking act? Like, if you're a high profile person and you're always fucking around with drugs, like, why wouldn't you want to?
Who's he trying to impress? Right.
Right. Probably, like, wouldn't you want to like live on the clean and narrow? Like,
I don't know if he's trying to impress us, right? He's cheating on his brother's ex-wife, his dead brother's ex-wife.
It's almost like he's a kid acting out. Like, he is so annoyed to be in this family. You know, I guess being the president's son is not all it's cracked up to be. He's just like, everything he does is an act out, I guess. If he just wants out so badly, he's like, maybe I'll just unconsciously do all the worst things.
Maybe. Or again, I wonder if he's trying to, if it's something against his father specifically, like he really wants to get his dad in trouble, or he hates him, and there's nothing he can do because his dad's more powerful than him. I mean, his dad's like, as much as people treat, it's kind of like when people said that George Bush was an idiot. Like, I don't get me wrong, like an 80-year-old man who's delirious and has brain surgeries and little things holding them together. Yeah, no, he's not 100% cogent, but at the end of the day, he's a dangerous guy. Like, if you think about Joe Biden, I would not have wanted 20, 30 years ago, I would not have wanted to get in a fight with him. Like, he's a dirty fighter. He seems dark, scary, and he's involved with mobsters, certain kinds of unionists that were on the darker side in the 70s and the 80s, connected with the cartels and different union groups that were killing people. Like, he's definitely a scary guy. It's not enough just to say, oh, Joe Biden, he's like a little old scary. He's not scary, he's a little man. We're missing out when we don't look at the sinisterness of him. So he could have him killed. I wouldn't be surprised at all if he was too embarrassing. Like, if you're someone's son's that embarrassing and you don't love inside you, like, what do you do about it, right?
This is crazy though. So do you think the media plays up the like, oh, he's just a dumb, bumbling idiot, rather than like, going to covering his dark side, or the corruption, the connections?
I think that's the easiest thing to do, right? I mean, because it placates the right wing that wants to criticize the president without actually targeting any actions he's doing It doesn't allow for anything to be looked into, and it helps because the right wing comedians and pundits on Fox and everything else will harp on those issues. Like, and he did look silly, and then
he fell off the stairs instead of like
but what else
asking
happened
who
that
the big guy is. Yeah.
what else happened that day, right? Like what things were signed, what wars were started, what deals were done about the baby powder formula, the Ukraine. I mean, when we start looking at it's the same. And similarly, what things were covered up by Ford falling down the stairs in Vietnam, in Cambodia. Like we do the same stunts. These are the same tactics. Nothing's changed at all. And it's crazy because people still buy it because they're new people. Like the old people are dead and the new people are new,
It's like we're just like dogs, and it's like, who wants a treat? We're like, oh my God, I love a treat. I love a president falling down the stairs. I didn't realize that President Ford fell down the stairs.
Oh, it's great. And he's like, it looks, and again, President Ford was never elected. He was selected to replace Nixon. Nixon stepped down. So a guy who was just picked by the party took over the United States. And of course, what do you do with a guy who is that important to the system, but not democratically elected? Well, you make him look like a clown and a fool. And the kinds of comedy that are you go to Samoa or Polynesia, or you go to India, you go to Russia. For whatever reason, the Three Stooges is still one of the most popular things in the world. People love Three Stooges because they don't have to understand it to laugh at it. And it's just a classic art form, slipping on a banana peel. It's that old style. So it appeals to the masses, and it's something that they use. And remember George Bush. The thing to remember about George Bush is at the end of his term, when someone threw a shoe at him and he just full matrixed. And that's when you knew. That's when you knew that George Bush was a genius. He was a Yale graduated theater.
He's low-key working out, like to be able to have.
Yeah. He went to Yale and he went to theater and he studied how to be the fool. And it's, the fool's the person who's allowed to say the things because they make the king laugh, right? And that's how George Bush ended up in power in a lot of ways. Aside from the fact that his father put him there, he was trained to do that. So we should be careful about just saying, oh, Biden is completely, even if he is just an idiot, at least we've kind of pushed it off. Like, who is Kamala Harris and what is she doing? But yeah, I don't think we can pretend that he's just completely out of it. He's still up to no good.
What do you think the goal of the hackers was? Like, what do you think their intent was? What do you think they wanted to uncover?
Well,
or do you think it's just to create chaos?
So it's like D. Hess, who had been at the ATM machine, called it K-order. There's this idea that order comes out of chaos comes out of order. But really, it's transparency. It's like in the Soviet Union, you had glasnost, and they wanted to show everything, just transparency. And if you really see everything, and this is like WikiLeaks and a lot of these things, they say transparency causes there's millions, some people won't get it, but millions and billions of people will get it. Eventually, it'll come to a consensus. So we need transparency. It'll hurt at first, but out of that, the lies will be destroyed. It's very Kantian, So I believe in transparency. I think that's the reason why the hackers wanted people to see it and to confirm and validate, hey, the first one, this laptop, you didn't believe it from the source for some reason. Here's another example where we had nothing to do with it. It's just literally from Apple, right? But the problem is no one's going to believe anything that they already don't believe. You're on the side of whoever side you're on. Nothing's changed since that day.
What would it take to flip people to the other side?
God only knows, because like the thing is, if you are defending a abusive relationship with your political party, it's hard to get out of that because you've already said, you've bet so much on the horse. And then the other thing is ideologically, it's confusing because a guy doing crack is, he's Machine Gun Kelly. Nobody cares. The people that are supposed to be like, how could they? Well, they're for it in so many ways. They want medical crack on the streets of Seattle, So it's not gonna push anything. The
Right.
only thing
Look
is
how popular Adderall is and how
yeah,
casual and common. Yeah.
right. Even I think in England they're looking at it as confused because they love cocaine, and cocaine's very popular in a lot of other parts of the world because the CIA pushed it to control places. It's kind of weird how cocaine's been stigmatized in the CIA country, the United States. That is a weird thing. So they're probably working towards that. I think the end of this will be that in 5 to 10 years, maybe 10 years, 10 years, Biden might be president. I mean, Hunter Biden could become president.
Oh,
Right? I mean,
no.
he's
Come
America's boy.
on.
He's America's boy. He's done everything he's as bad as any TikToker you've ever seen. He's he's worse than
We've all seen his
Carter,
penis.
Aaron Carter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But why does he have to show the CIA so many videos of his? You know what I mean? If it's just like, hey, this is what I'm up to. Like, why does he? Why do you
I mean,
need
if you
so
saw
many?
what the CIA did in the Bay of Pigs, you'd want to show him too. You know, I feel like maybe he's out maybe he's out for blood. Who knows?
Oh my God. If Hunter Biden becomes president, I don't know. I'm probably not
Right?
going to do anything. I'll probably just have more stand-up material.
That's the truth. Yeah. But I don't know. I'm scared. I'm scared of it because obviously the point is we're getting towards more and more selective enforcement. And it's the irony being, they think the rich white Republicans, that's what they're fighting against. Well, dude, this guy is building a circumstance for, a liberal world order where they decriminalize people, not crimes. Certain people will be allowed to do whatever.
Right.
And when we say whatever, I mean, if you've seen the emails, it's not just that he's buying crack. He's trying to buy Asians, it says. And then the dealer says, I'm not getting you an Asian again. I won't do it. So he's like, no, just get an American from Asian descent. Like, fine. I mean, like, these are the
Didn't
kinds
it
of
come up
conversations-
in the cloud? Like it was I saw something that was his search history, and it was like his Pornhub searches or like his porn searches, and one was for like 12-year-olds.
Jesus. Yeah, I'm
So-
sure. I mean, the thing is, it's going to happen. He's got to be so tainted. And you see some of these stories like Conspiracy of Silence with Lawrence King, the young Republican African-American singer in the 80s. They had a Nebraska case with the Boys Town. And so many of these kids that were being molested and raped by corporate businessmen, senators, congressional people in the 80s, they said, you know what? They're innocent until proven guilty. These witnesses you have don't count. Kids, you are being arrested for perjury for saying that you've been raped. And then they gave them solitary confinement for decades, a lot of these kids. So, I mean, we're seeing the same resurgence of that kind of thing. We're back to Boys Town, and it's terrifying, really.
Bryson Gray made an awesome song, and I'm amazed at how fast that he can just churn this out. If your guys are not listening to Bryson Gray,
this guy, dude.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
It is the catchiest tune ever. I listened to it about like 5 times yesterday. Let's see. I probably won't get dinged. Let's see. Let's just play a little. It's so good.
They gon' hate me for this one. Hey, you know what's really wild? Got your own son calling you a pedophile. Why you getting called that by your own child? It's a pedo Peter every time the phone down. Wow, Hunter arguing with hookers while he wearing crack. Whoa, they call it a conspiracy, but I'm saying facts. Whoa, in the mansion up in Cali, but who pay for that? Whoa, the media gon' cover it up like he ain't get hacked. Whoa. Here we go again. If it was Trump Jr., it would be on CNN. This what happens when you rich, but you a slave to sin. This what happens when the devil knock you, let him in. Nah, I don't care about who this offend. Buying crime family, they all belong in the pen. Buying loves minors, that's the real BLM. Call me what you want, but at least I ain't a damn. Wait, hold up, don't get mad at me. Am I tripping or is he in bed with Natalie? Why he recording all that? What's the strategy? If you do incest, you probably do bestiality. Hey, the president's son is a crackhead, but you the smartest guy. He noticed what your dad said. Is he the real president or Jack led? Why is everyone that voted for your dad dead? Hey, you know what's really wild? Got your own son calling you a pedophile. Why you getting called that by your own child? They say pedo Peter every time the phone down. Wow, Hunter arguing with hookers while he wearing crack.
Oh my God. Oh yeah, by the way, this song is called Hunter Biden Hacked, and it hit #1. I think it surpassed let's see.
See, that's what I'm hoping for. I want this to be on the radio. I feel like this could be K-Don pop number, like top 10s. This could beat Max Martin and Britney Spears. This is great. Yeah.
Oh, Hunter Biden Hacked. It's called Hacked in the top 10 on iTunes.
It is.
It's so good. And I was like, this is the way, just like comedy, music is a really good way to like just plant seeds of truth and make people start to go, oh, maybe I'll look into that.
Word.
But then again, like, as someone who's going to listen to Bryson Gray, like, they're probably already on board with everything. He's like literally a MAGA rapper. So But you
Yeah,
never know.
you gotta sneak it into the radio. That's the thing. Just people gotta keep calling stations and that are not into playing that kind of thing, and then asking them to play it. And eventually, hopefully at least 1 out of 1,000 stations are gonna play it, and then that'll be the beginning of other people hearing it. And just the thing is, like, we've done such a great job at using the internet to divide us. It used to be this thing. I knew kids who could speak English in every country because they were raised in the Usenet forums. And now people speak their own languages. They're all locked away from each other. And even just in America, like, you don't see a content creator if they're not in your circle. The only way to break out if you get shadow banned is to organically, and this is what we've been doing the last 4 or 5 years, going to these events, going and meeting people, and in real life, right? And that's kind of the tragedy of January 6th. Like, so many of those people, you remember those moms that couldn't fly home and everything?
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
it was a meetup. It was a meetup that brought their cookies and stuff. It's not what people think. It's just that they were scared that the internet was shutting them down and they wanted to communicate. At least a big number of people.
What do you think? This is an interesting comment from TNT. Reacting to Hunter's nonsense is cringe. Nothing is legally viable. No one cares about some sussy nickname. And it's unfortunate that we've been so desensitized to hardcore drug use. But again, it's the hypocrisy of if any of Trump's kids were caught with any of this, they wouldn't stop talking about it.
Yeah, that's the thing. It comes down to the fact that it has nothing to do with, and this is maybe why TNT's right. It has nothing to do with the fact that they are doing crack. It's that they're Hunter Biden's son, and we're looking for any reason to be upset at them. And we have to admit that. That's totally true. However, it's not the crack. I don't really care about crack. I think I don't do crack. I would never recommend crack, but it hasn't harmed my record collection. So I'm not going to tell you what to do exactly. I'm just saying that Hunter Biden ordering 12-year-olds and Asians and arguing about it with his human trafficking dealer is kind of an interesting story. And yeah, it's cringe. You know what I mean? Like, reacting to it, I'm cringing. I agree. Whatever. That's true.
Then you have to get the majority of people to believe that we have a human trafficking problem in this country, and it's
right. No, I mean, and maybe if they just stop Super Bowl, right? But every year, at Super Bowl, you see 1,000 kids disappear. And yeah, I mean, this is something that comes up in California a lot. I remember someone saying, we need tourism in Santa Cruz. I'm like, no, we need to bomb the bridges so that people can't get into the town because the traffic jams are too bad, right? And then they said, no, we need to step up marijuana production because marijuana and tourism are our main Californian exports besides technology. I'm like, really? Human trafficking. Look at Long Beach. Look at all of the ports. Look at the migrant crisis. Look at how 1 out of 3 kids goes missing when they cross the border. If you start to look into how many people have been, and I think it's more. I had Jorge Ventura on recently, and he had better numbers than that.
Oh, I love Jorge.
He's a beautiful man. But also, we're in a situation where human trafficking is. It's impossible to ignore it. I don't know who's even pretending it doesn't exist. It's the question of whether or not it's just priests or whether or not it's just celebrities or whether or not there really is this organized system that is the same way other organized crimes work, where you have decriminalization for certain groups, whether they be cartels, whether they be foreign nationals that don't have to go through the same court systems because they're in a sanctuary city, whether they be American brothers and sons of politicians and agencies. All of this stuff, and this is the sad truth. The left and the right used to just look over each other's back. It used to be that America was this zombie game and we had guns and we were back to back, and the left and the right, the left said, you look over your shoulder right at the college intellectuals and the social fat cats that I trust so much. You make sure that I'm not missing anything. And then the right's like, okay, well, you look over the shoulder for the fat cats and the corporatists because I'm missing them. And we just got each other's back.
Wow.
And now we just turned it inwards and we're just aimed at each other while the intellectualists, socialists, and the corporate fat cats rise to the power collectively. It's
like the biggest on the left versus the biggest on the right, and then all us common folk are just sort of
right. It's like we're missing the point that it's not about the left or the right, but it's literally just about the haves and the have-nots. And I know that sounds almost like Marxism, but it's not just that. It's that the people that are trying to say, hey, I want to have the right to own property itself. So they're in there too. Your right to exist, your right to own, your right to have self-determination, to make your own decisions, regardless of what a mob tells you is the majority rule. Those things are all in question,
Yeah, well, it sounds like, you were at the early Occupy Wall Street, so you can probably see how that was taken from kind of a grassroots movement to like, oh, the powers that be are like, let's squash this because the issue really is about class. Let's just turn it into race via
I didn't really
BLM.
see the Occupy as a grassroots. I remember the AstroTurf movement of Occupy. I mean, I remember Teamsters dropping off buses in Oakland to pick up kids to bring to the ports to block the ships from coming from China, so they'd have to turn around so that the Chinese media would report that America was having these protests about property rights and trying to make it seem more socialist. So I always felt like it was a big optics thing. And the Lucis Trust, who is, the satanic organization that Allison Foster Bailey started, that did the great invocation ceremony, this weird occult prayer to the God of the known name of the many nations worship, et cetera, in all white robes, that started the UN, right? The UN's first thing was the Great Invocation, they call it. So the Lucis Trust is directly tied to the occupation movement. Occupation, a legal term. The UN, Lucis Trust occupying on American soil using civilians, non-military personnel, which is technically at that time considered non-state sanctioned violence, which is terrorism. So there were a little bit more to the Occupy movement than the grassroots movement. I remembered was 2007 and 8. You have the Truth movement became the Ron Paul movement. You have a lot of conservatives and libertarians, the constitutionalists that were kind of created. And a lot of people thought if we just told people the truth, right? There's a 9/11 thing. We'll tell them the truth. They'll know what's happening and they'll make the right decision. And of course, that was a naive thought, because the right thing to do, unfortunately, was create really good propaganda, which is always the right answer. And you look at Shepard Fairey, and he created the Obey movement. And between Truth, which was not very well marketed, and the Obey movement, which was very gestalt, that movement sold. And so it worked. So we lost, I think, the Truth movement lost to the Obey movement, and that led to the AstroTurf.
It's like unsettling, but it's also true to hear you say, like, yeah, the answer is really good propaganda. Do you see, I don't know, non-leftists ever, like,
I think so.
If the leftists have won through
the left
culture,
can't meme. The left can't meme. So
is that what we do? We just have to keep memeing till conditions improve.
Totally. Yeah, it's literally just meme magic. Meme magic works. You can think of Subgenius movement. They've taken a lot of the same things that Scientology did. We just need to figure out what works and use those tools. And it's, it sounds maybe weirder than it is, because you're like, wow, I should be focusing on only the truth. But that's kind of like when a kid says, I want to start a band, and they're only focusing on I want to be a cool band, but they're not focusing on the kind of music and practicing. Like, we do need these skills. These are very important skills. And that's why podcasts and comedians like yourself are trying to do content about what you're interested in instead of what they're telling you to do content about. So, and it shines true. The beauty is there's so few people doing that you're filling the niche, and they're going to be looking for you like, oh man, there's finally someone doing that.
Well, that's comforting. Yeah. Sometimes I feel like, I mean, like, what am I doing? That's all that special.
I mean, Lucille Ball's dead. You had to take over. It's the Phoenix Rising time.
It's true. It's true. Kathy Griffin was the redheaded legacy, and now it's me. I mean, she's still alive, but you guys get it. Whew. Let's see. We had a couple of interesting articles about sex workers and sex crimes. Let's pull these up.
Right.
Okay. You're like, this
people
is
love sex.
People love it. Let's see. NS is at Nova Scotia. Yeah. Sex worker going to small claims court over non-payment. Sex workers need economic stability, just like any other worker in Canada. I feel like Canada is a little bit more like loosey-goosey about this than the US.
That's absolutely true. And that's the reason why this case exists. And it's that's what makes it interesting, because it's illegal to solicit sexual services, but it's legal to sell yourself, I think is the way it works. So the person didn't pay the worker and they're taking them to court. They have to figure out what your legal rights are in Canada. Right. And granted, it's interesting because, hey, here's an example where someone isn't getting paid for a contract. In terms of just legal contracts, that's a big deal. But in the main arguments against paying the contract would be that it's an immoral thing. But does Canada believe in morals really over law? So,
whoa, Yeah, the woman at the center of the case said she spent an evening with a client in January. Afterwards, she realized she wasn't going to be paid when the pin for the bank card he'd given her withdrawal money didn't work. Feels pretty humiliating to not get paid. Yeah, this is why we do deposits, ladies. It feels pretty humiliating to not get paid after providing so much for someone. Also, it's so frustrating that we don't have more protection.
So she's a survivor of human trafficking, she says. I don't know exactly what that relates to, but she also does not have her own pimp. So obviously there's no one to go beat up the guy who doesn't pay the
She's an
fee.
entrepreneur. Yeah, she's an independent businesswoman. I'm very passionate about sex workers. Well, yeah, no one's going to step up and be like, I'm going to be the HR department for sex workers. Because in this country, a lot of banks just bail on working with you.
I wonder what we're going to do, because at the end of the day, what this is going to say is everyone can, I mean, it's going to decide the fate of the world. If people are going to start selling their sexual services, it's also probably going to break down marriage. I don't know. I have a lot of speculation about ramifications for this, because if it says that you can do this without a pimp, and it also decides they haven't charged this guy with committing a crime, right? So that's the other thing. I mean, he's committed a crime of not following his contract. He's been subpoenaed, he's been summoned, but it's not that he committed the crime of soliciting prostitution. So they're not saying it. So they're moving just directly towards contract law with this.
So they're able to prove that it was consenting between the two of them. They're probably, she probably has like receipts and texts and things she can show to be like, all right, this guy was fully on board. We had agreed.
The problem I see with this also is that when it goes the other direction, because what happens if it's been agreed and then she decides efficiency of breach, doesn't want to fulfill the contract. It's not in the contract that she can cancel the contract or something like that. That's also going to, I mean, imagining the problem with contract law is it can lead to voluntary slavery. So imagine if this was for a period of time of 10 years instead of for an hour or something like that.
Right.
And we're moving towards a really dangerous precedent where you can sell yourself because you might you might naively sell yourself thinking you know what that means.
Damn. And that's the thing, is you can get a partial refund if someone was supposed to fix your roof and they did a shitty job. Like, what if someone gives you a terrible hand job? Like, how do you? That's I guess it's harder to prove.
Yeah, I mean, I think tip
Look,
culture.
Officer, I didn't come.
I don't know. Does Canada have the same tip culture as the United States with like service?
That's a good question.
I
I
wonder.
haven't been to Canada for many years. I just assume everybody outside of the U.S. sucks at tipping.
Yeah, because they're great at paying people appropriately. Yeah.
Oh man, what like how does this give you a concern about marriage? Because you think women can then go, oh well,
I mean,
promised myself to this man for X amount of years.
Yeah, I think what's gonna happen. Yeah, exactly. I think this leads. That's kind of. I know that sounds weird and crazy, but the way law works and the way precedent works, they're going to start saying, "What is a marriage contract?" Right? It's not just this holy matrimony thing. And what are the services rendered? And where does efficiency of breach happen? And how do you have efficiency of breach in a civil union? And then you're going to also just psychologically, women looking at that and saying, "Okay, a marriage is not this like." Thing, this beautiful dress in this church. It's this contract of services that's supposed to last a period until death do us part. You know, it's a crazy idea. I would be better off just soliciting those services for brief periods of time. And so really, you know, I'm not doing anything different than getting married for, you know, and divorced, but by the hour, you know. And I think that's the other psychological thing that's starting to develop is this idea that, hey, sex is, you know, as Jordan Peterson said, there's no such thing as casual sex. It's like a oxymoronic term, but that is becoming the logic. They're saying, well, we need to de-escalate the importance of sex. It should become just another, you know, casual social experience. I mean, these things sound crazy, but they're the exact same logics that the Soviet Union were using during Lenin's time. They tried to ban marriage at first in the Soviet Union. Then they said, well, it's really going to be just really easy to get married. You sign a piece of paper, you unsign a piece of paper, it's done.
Wow.
But they really wanted to just end the whole idea because the family nucleus was a threat to the proletariat.
And you see there's so many divorces and like gold diggers and like, unfortunately, like women who take advantage of a man's financial situation, which I feel like is breeding a generation of men who are really quite nervous about jumping into something like marriage. And if they're like, well, if I'm a successful guy, if you consider, what do they say? Like 20% of the men get 80% of the women or something like that. Like if you're like a top tier man and you have no interest in getting married, right. Can you have a kind of contract that moves beyond, Derek Jeter giving you a basket when he sends you home in a car after your hookup, Can you have
look
a
at
hookup contract?
Elon Musk, man, and then NDAs and all these things. Yeah, those exist. It's whether or not they become socially normalized. They've been normalized in LA. They've been normalized in New York to some extent. I'm sure that you'll find in Texas as well, places where you have lots of money. There are prostitutes and there are call girls and there are confused teenagers on the internet that have ended up in situations where they were paid $1,000 to $10,000 to remain silent about whatever nights that they've spent with some CEOs. That's pretty normalized. So, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. The other thing is you look at how marriage has fallen apart in socialized countries in Northern Europe, like Scandinavia. A lot of the time, there's no value to a marriage because it's a property merger, which is dangerous. And the state will continue to pay subsidize all the services that the husband used to have to provide, which is not necessarily like a horrible thing because it's great that arguably the state should be subsidizing an alternative to abortion, right? If it's just people saying, I can't afford a kid, then the answer isn't very great that we're saying, great, well, we'll just help you get rid of that then. No, it should be society should make it easier for corporations should have
especially
daycare
when you have such a huge amount of people who want to adopt who can't have kids.
Right. Yeah. I mean, in general, though, there are people that's true, but also there are people that would have kids if it weren't impossible. And how expensive it is right now to keep yourself alive, it's almost impossible to get married and take care of someone else. Everyone has to be married and taking care of themselves in this weird share. It's very difficult whereas you go to Iceland, they'll subsidize you having a kid because Iceland needs to have more kids. And in the long run, they're taxpayers, right? So a way to think of it is they're not a clump of cells, they're a potential taxpayer. And you can think about the money that they're going to make for the society.
Dollars.
Yeah. Clump of dollars. I like that. There it is.
This what you're saying reminds me of, this is one of my favorite people. His name is Joselito. He's a guy and he'll do these live shows. He has his puppet and he goes between English and Spanish and Spanglish. So we're talking about like sugar daddies, and he did this really funny voiceover that I want to play because it's relevant. I think it's in Spanish, but he dubs it over. Oh, why can't I hear it? No. Oh, because I didn't push the volume button. There we go.
If you bitch on the side when my pussy was acting up, but I never said nothing about
Oh, you want to act brand new because your wife here? You didn't tell me you was going to pay me $5,000 to fuck because you was tired of her wrinkly toto?
Hey, Dios mío, this putty's lies are giving me a headache.
More like the truth is giving you a heart attack. Don't get paniqueado now.
Hey, me duele.
I hope you fucking die, cabrón. For making me suck that ugly, wrinkly
telenovela
for free, you fucking cabrón. I hope you fucking right
Hey,
now.
Dios mío, it's like this putty put brujería on me.
All right, enough is enough. Leave my azúcar papi alone. Don't touch me, so puerca. You might be able to fool them like you tough, but I know you scary, puti. That's right. I'll drag you out this bitch like you a 100-pound bag of rice and I'm doing a compra. Do it. Okay. But I think it's funny that you think I need permission to drag your puerca ass up out of here. Listen, I got a good thing going with azúcar papi. It pays me. You come back around here, I'm gonna kill you, puti. Get the fuck out of here. Oh my God. Please, no. He never gave me my $5,000. Come on, get up off the floor, puti. Come on, you okay? What happened? No, I'm not okay. They had me suck your wrinkly bitch. It looked like a twist, like I didn't even get paid.
Listen, puti, stop lying. You decide, puti.
Anyway.
God.
That's one of the potential drawbacks from sex work.
Yeah, I get that. I think that the taco thing was weird. When they said breakfast tacos, because
what was that? Jill Biden referred to Hispanic people as breakfast tacos.
Well, it was better than I thought. It was way more innocent than I thought because I've seen people literally refer to Latino constituency talks in the morning as breakfast talk. O's, like talking. And so I've seen that
Oh,
happen
boy.
like 10, 15 years ago. There's been stories of it. Jill Biden, though, and I thought this was like a long time ago, but I guess I don't know if it's just resurging now or she just said it recently. I thought it was a long time ago. She said the diversity amongst Latinos in Texas is as diverse as the breakfast tacos served here, which was a pretty weird thing to say. It was actually weirdly worse than trying to call, a breakfast conference a breakfast taco, a Latino taco. I think honestly, it's grandma level of naive, though. It's like, wow, lady, you were so.
Didn't she also pronounce bogeda, or like something where like she's clearly never been to one if she wasn't able to put that together?
Poor lady. I mean, these are the little things, though, right? Like, I
boomers.
mean, George Bush said nuclear, and I imagine he practiced it the night before. Like Winston Churchill used to stand in front of the mirror and practice being brilliant, but nobody likes a brilliant man. You know what I mean? It's all about the Norm Macdonald thing. So George Bush had to say nuclear. Oh, I got it. I'm going to say nuclear. He's from like Connecticut.
So
born
you
in
planned
Connecticut.
that.
Yeah, he moved to Texas. He's afraid of horses. So we have to remember the aesthetic of the theater that is Washington, D.C. is just ugly celebrities, right?
True. And anytime I pretend not to know something, it's all just a plan to make me more relatable. Matthew Hammond said they build submarines in the Confederate States.
That's true. I've got a movie that's on my Odyssey channel. It's called, I made it. It's an animation. It's the best Confederate vaporwave Tartaria documentary film ever made, probably. I imagine there's not a lot like it, but it's about time travel and going to the Confederate period and seeing the espionage that went on with building the submarines and the airships, because there were also airships during the Civil War. People don't really think about that. And it's a crazy thing. Imagine you're a kid and you're told, hey, you could step up in the army. You're a private. You could become a first lieutenant if you do. There's a special mission coming, but the mission is they're going to put you in a balloon up in the sky around the cloud level, and you're going to be up there for 6 to 8 hours while you're sending a telegram signal down or a message on a rope down while you're spying and drawing maps or something. And there were people being shot out of the sky, and then the Union caught one of the balloons and made their own. So near the end of the war, there were balloons fighting balloons, and they had to fill the balloons, these weird carts filled with weird gases, and they were making these clouds to try to hide. So fake clouds that were, essentially geoengineering. Civil War is a lot weirder than people think.
Whoa. I've people in the chat are like, you got to mention this. Of course, this goes without saying. Speaking of spicy Latinas, this is pretty big news today. AOC, basically our buddy Alex Stein confronted AOC on the steps of the Capitol. I don't think she knew who he was. She definitely does now.
She didn't act like she did. No.
This whole thing is so funny because she at first, before seeing the footage, she, after he kind of, confronted her, she was like, "Oh, you're my favorite. You look so sexy." She climbed to the top of the stairs, got her phone out, and was like, "Oh, see this man back here?" And she like shows her phone, and Alex is like, "Hey, he's disgusting. He said I had a juicy booty or something." And then
as soon as swoon. She liked it.
Yeah, she was being extra. And as soon as the footage came out, his actual footage, she deleted that tweet because she made it sound worse than it really was. Like he was being complimentary. Let's see if I can refresh this. Alex Stein is the best. Oh God, so this is what she initially posted.
Hey everybody, I'm here in the Capitol. See this guy right there? Right there.
He's like waving.
He said, "Hey," right in front of a Capitol police officer. Said, "Hey, here's this. Look at that big ass. Look at that big juicy booty. This Latina, like whatever, all the bunch of racist, sexist stuff." And since nobody can do anything,
because freedom of speech,
I'm just telling you because. This institution is not designed to protect.
She's going to say women.
People.
Is she saying that we shouldn't protect Alex Stein's
and
freedom
really
of speech,
hard.
or we're not protecting her?
I feel like she wishes she had a huge security detail following just her in particular around all the time.
Come on, that's so J-Lo, though. I mean, you want to talk about stereotypes.
She doesn't feel that Brett Kavanaugh should be protected. She feels like people should be protesting in front of their houses 24/7. and that protests are not supposed to be
And
peaceful.
it's really sad that my only recourse is to just let you know about it. But that seems
honestly, this is why women shouldn't be in positions of power, is because like you react emotionally. Had she just kept walking and ignored it, this would not have been news on every outlet. And it's just because she's making it about her. She's making it about her. It's sexist. It's racist. Now I can virtue signal, and she ends up looking like a retard.
I think the thing that was so crazy about that incident is not even that it happened, but that it happened on the Capitol steps.
Oh God!
Right in front of a Capitol police officer.
Yeah, she can't get away from. She can't let it go that nobody came in to save her.
And this dude was engaged. Like, this wasn't about a political opinion or protest or anything like that. He was engaged in very clearly sexually threatening, aggressive behavior.
Compliments are sexually threatening?
In front, on the Capitol steps in front of an officer. And he wasn't even asked to take a step back.
Like, why didn't you're such a strong, independent woman. Why don't you ask him to step the fuck back?
This officer was just cool with it. And it just, like, I really just can't help but think about all of that footage and evidence that we saw the day of all these Capitol police officers
non sequitur
helping and being sympathetic.
Yeah, let me make it about my other point.
The insurrectionists on January 6th. And everyone just decided it was too politically difficult to deal with. So they all just...
It hurts my face. Just like I have to squeeze my eyes when I see something. So for me, it's like when you watch those movies and then something like, don't do that. And then the guy's doing, it's like Mr. Bean. So you've got, I don't know. Maybe there's some truth because you're saying it. I don't know if it's true. Women have a harder time coming towards stoicism. I don't know. The thing is, I think of Barbara Corcoran from Shark Tank, who says, don't cry.
She's the best.
She's and like, come on, women like that in politics are based, and I'm for it. Margaret Thatcher is a vicious, cold-blooded killer. You know what I mean? There's nothing like Margaret Thatcher. There's no reason to pretend that women aren't funny or cold-blooded killers. It is what it is. However, there are examples where people, and I think I'm glad she used that term because it's true. It's just something everyone does. A lot of people do. They're not stoic, and instead of ignoring your heart, ignoring your feelings because they will trick you, and listening to the reason because the reason will last forever. Instead of doing that, you're this feeling of, oh, I have this feeling. Well, what is this guttural feeling connected to in my mind? I feel bad about this. Okay. What else do I feel bad about? Like that bad. Oh, I feel bad about this. So there's a lot of connections being made. It's a red line conspiracy map, but it's of feelings, right? Which is an acid trip to deal with. And it's hard for me to digest her feelings. I don't know. It's hard, especially then we're the lawyers just saying, okay, freedom of speech, self-determination, right to stand there and peaceably assemble. What do you want? Did he do anything? She approached him. He could have sued.
Oh, yeah. She could have kept walking. She knows she's hot. She knows she's the youngest woman ever in that position. You don't wear a body if you don't want anyone to come
struggling to be at 7.
Wear a garbage bag. Don't wear a nice white dress that's like clinging to your body. Like, like any woman, like, I don't know. I feel like older, like certainly when you become of age, 18, you know what to wear that will elicit a certain effect in the opposite sex. You also just know what to wear that looks good on you. And a lot of times what looks good on you, the opposite sex would agree that also looks good on you. And it's like, she's too old to not know what she looks like in certain outfits. And it's like, so a random guy to her on the steps of the Capitol saying, oh, you got a big booty. You're my favorite Latina. You look sexy. Like, if that's harassment, AOC, like, you haven't experienced harassment. Like, that's like, you get worse than that walking past a construction site, which maybe sometimes I've done for fun, for a quick pick me up. She's just,
I knew this lady in Brazil who was like devastated. She was walking, she was in America, but she's from Brazil. And so she's walking past a construction site and none of the dudes made any noises at all. And it was like, at first she didn't know what was going on because she's from Brazil. That's not the way things are done there. And eventually she gets home and she's starting more and more worked up about it. And her mom was there. Her mom was like, what happened? And she's like, they didn't like look at me. I don't know what's wrong with me. Like, I thought, am I not lovable? Like, basically was what happened. And the mom had some good advice. She said, you go back there, you go clean yourself up, get on the most like slutty outfit that you have, and you walk back in front of there until they do. And then you get that dealt with, and then you move on with your day. And so it's weird because it's also a completely different culture. People are assuming that America is weirdly puritanical. Weirdly puritanical. We have these weird ideas about sex, about culture. I mean, even especially weird is the conservatives have become the ones that are the least pro-sex. I mean, we used to be trying to stop people from burning people at the stakes. Liberty was this movement. You're allowed to be and do your things you want to do. Those things have all been taken over because they've become socially normative. So they're now part of the left movement has taken over sex. That used to not be the way things were. Social movements were often religious, and they were puritanical, and they would stop these kinds of things. So we've reversed our entire understanding of sexuality. But I think the other thing is, it's like South Park. We're running out of things to test the waters of freedom with, because no one's willing to take the risks. And so because of that, we're moving towards a place where it will happen eventually, where we just get rid of freedom of speech, because it's not as important to people to fight for anymore. They're more concerned with just regularity of society. Yeah, I mean, and you look at Germany in the 20s and 30s, and this is what happened there. They had a lot of freedom in the 20s and 30s, up until they became a fascist state. And what did they do? For whatever else you want to say about them, they cut down. First thing they do is cut down on freedom of expression, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, and all of these things. Those are the first things that will go, regardless of anything else that happens.
Very interesting. Yeah, I think like AOC, you can't have it both ways. Like, you want to be in politics and be taken seriously. It's like, yeah, then you have to, like, I don't know, forego kind of, I think, dressing cute, or at least acknowledging like that's what happens.
But she could sue. She could be like, I'm going to go to a therapist, and then she could say, I'm going to charge him the cost of the therapy bills or something like that. This is the weird thing is we're still living in the post 90s. Like, you could burn yourself on your coffee.
True. And so she said, I posted about a deeply disgusting incident that happened today on the Capitol steps, but took it down because it's clearly someone seeking extremist fame. No, she took it down because she made it sound way worse than it was. She kind of made it sound like he had said a slur, because she's like, oh, he said, asterisk, 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 Latina, when really he just said sexy, which is not a curse word. So that's really why she took it down.
It shows you what she thinks about sexuality, though. And it's interesting,
Well, it's like she's one of these chicks that wants it both ways. She wants to be able to look cute, but God forbid the wrong person compliments her on it. If her fucking cucky liberal, fiance complimented her on her like Latina booty, that would be fine. But because Alex Stein does it, she's being harassed. Here's a video he posted of the incident. I was actually walking over to deck him, because if no one will protect us, then I'll do it myself, but I need to catch a vote more than a case today. So here's what actually happened.
My favorite big booty Latina. I love you, AOC. You're my favorite. She wants to kill babies, but she's still beautiful. You look very beautiful in that dress. You look very sexy. Look at that booty on AOC. That's my favorite big booty Latina. I love it. My favorite, AOC. Nice to meet you, AOC. Look how sexy she looks in that dress. Woo, I love it, AOC. Hot like a tamale. She, my favorite.
So she keeps walking. She walks up to she keeps walking to the top of the stairs, and then she does her video. He just, literally just compliments, just saying she's sexy. And I can tell by watching this, like, she was not going to hit him. She just I think she just did not know what to do. She was,
if he hadn't mentioned the babies thing, like she wants to kill dead babies or whatever the thing, like if he didn't say that, she probably would have thought he was just a fan. You know, it's a normal thing probably these days. Crazy guys in DC, they exist.
Yeah. Oh, guess what? Like, he's won. If you have an emotional reaction and you let it get the best of you, and you post and you're triggered, it's like, yeah, well, mission accomplished for Alex Stein. Like, the thing is, if you can't control your emotions, maybe you shouldn't be part of Congress. I don't know.
That's how we get robots. We're just gonna start electing robots.
Okay, I'm not saying to be unemotional, but this thing, she's kind of young, and she just hasn't really learned to control her emotions.
So here's the odd man out opinion. I kind of like AOC sometimes, because she's like so much chaos. She doesn't mean to do the things she does, and she ends up messing up her own side a lot, which is awesome. She comes in, she shakes things up, she yells about something she knows nothing about, and then out of that, the truth will emerge constitutionally, and it's in her own side. Like, what are you doing? Be quiet. Like, we've already kind of wrestled control despite the odds. And then she just tears it apart for them. So she kind of feels like this Pepe the Frog character. And I always imagine like, I would love Trump and AOC to be like their own political thing, because they would just do so much chaos, you know?
That's true. They're both very entertaining. Chrissy and Andreas, did you see Lauren Southern's manifesto? No, I haven't yet. It's 3 hours, so it's like it never feels like a good time to just sit down and watch it, but I gotta start watching it in chunks.
I'll give it a shot. Yeah, I do like Lauren Southern, so
I like her too. This I should have brought up before from Aaron. When I went for undercover security as a male model type, they had a handful of groups who were trying to force several of them into sex work. A former mayor was even involved in it. Damn.
Yeah, exactly.
Spicy.
Dude, I had a friend who was driving trucks for one of the non-U.S. Postal Service parcel delivery trucks, and somebody started banging in the back of the truck in one of the boxes and screaming, and it was a 19-year-old girl. You know? So, you know, it's pretty common. I don't think people get that. You ever heard being shanghaied? So in the old days, like my dad told me this as a kid, because I'm from the coast. And he grew up there too. Like, don't just get drunk when you're like 16 to 30 and you're alone. Don't go, be careful, because it's dudes who run these boats back and forth to China. They're doing trade ships, aka pirates of the 20th and 21st century. They'll kidnap people. You'll wake up on a boat and you're working on a boat until they end up back home, which could take like 18 months to a year. So, I mean, they do that a lot.
Damn.
Still.
It's a crazy world out there. AOC's alignment is chaotic bimbo.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, NVIDIA. You get
it. She really is. She just has. If Brittany Venti was here, she would say she has bimbo power. For sure.
Bimbo power's real.
Bimbo power is legit. I just did like a whole show the other day about this new craze called the it's called the fucking. It's basically a certain kind of like Gen Z like stare, the siren stare. It's just something like, oh, if you perfect it, you can get any man. I'm like, yeah, you mean eye contact, extended eye contact that's been around forever? Like that just tells you like how easy
the new
men
kids
are.
And also how confused kids are. They're like, wait, if you get away from this computer thing and you look them in the eyes, I'm telling you.
What? It works? Oh my God.
Yeah.
The siren gaze. Thank you, NVIDIA. I got to bring that up again at TimCast. And then, of course, siren gaze.
You've heard about vabbing now. Vabbing. It's where they're rubbing a little vab juice on them to make
yep. It's better than buying a new expensive perfume, I guess. Like,
what's the other one? Passion rice or whatever, where like the Asians stand over rice as it's steaming and then they make the rice and sell it. Yeah. The internet's weird.
Wait a second. So it's both vaginal steaming and vaginal rice. So you're making the rice vag scented.
I've never done it, but it's a thing.
I don't know. I feel like you've maybe dipped your dong into some rice before.
That seems like a really hot, like painful concept. I don't think it's good.
Yeah, I agree. Wow, my God, Andreas, you're interesting as fuck. We will have to do another pod where we get a little more specifically deeper into some of these conspiracies, because I think we can have some fun. And
you're gonna have to come on my show as well. I'll trade you back.
Yeah, everybody wins. Awesome. Okay, other than following and subscribing to your YouTube channel, where else can people find you?
Dude, please follow Twitter. I'm trying to build my Twitter up because it's kind of new. So Andreas Xirtus, as it says here on Twitter. And then andreas.me or xirtus.com or my websites. And the YouTube. Go hog wild on the YouTube. There's like hundreds of videos that are all about crazy things.
Yes, follow me. It's AndreasXirtus. Follow him. Beef up his Twitter.
Thank you.
Give him an RT. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. It was fun.
Yes, join the Discord, everyone. Thank you. Good night, mister. And thank you to the chat for your comments and questions. You guys are the best. Until next time.